Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go.
All right, so I saw a documentary in the theater over the weekend, Three Identical Strangers. Have you heard about this?
No, I saw the trailer though. Yes.
It's really
Life
cool.
is stranger than fiction. Yeah, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, and I didn't. I mean, obviously, you know, they were big. The story's about first of all, it's two people finding out that they are identical twins, and then a third one finds out about them because there were a bunch of articles written about these two guys who found each other, and then the third guy's like, hey, that looks like just like me, and then so they all get together, and then they have this family that they didn't even know about, and then that's where a lot of the news stories stop back in the 80s, like 1978 or 1980, I think is when they found out about all this, and when they were about 20 years old. And the documentary tells about all that stuff, but then it moves forward past that about how their lives, what happened with their lives, past that. And then it kind of hints at something nefarious going on and the reason why they might have been split up initially. So that, and it gets more complicated after that, but it's cool. It's a neat structure for the documentary. And it's well done. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a simple story, but it's still interesting, and there you still have things that you're looking for in a movie, highs and lows and dynamics, and you get those from this real story, which, like you said, it's amazing how sometimes real life is more interesting than fiction. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. I'm sure it's going to be on, streaming and stuff, but I tried to use my Movie Pass to go see it over the weekend, but Movie Pass is dying a very, very slow death. So maybe it's a fast death, I guess. So
Movie Pass is dying.
yeah, Movie Pass is dying big time.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Now Alamo is coming out with something similar to Movie Pass, just for Alamo theaters. So I'm really looking forward to that, but that's probably not going to be for another 6 months or so. But anyway, so yeah, that kind of sucked, but I still got to see the movie, so I was excited about that. And then Steph and I are going to a Spartan race in Asheville this weekend, and specifically, it's in Black Mountain, North Carolina, which is right outside of Asheville. And the parking lot for like where you park to get ready for the Spartan, like to park your car, get ready for the Spartan race, is exactly where the three billboards from Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri were. So they shot that portion of the movie in Black Mountain, North Carolina, and the exact spot where those three billboards were is pretty much where the race is. So I will be there this weekend. So I don't think the billboards are there, but still, the house like overlooking the billboards and all that stuff, that's all real. So I'll get to see all that stuff, take some pictures, and it should be interesting.
What makes you think that the billboards are not still up?
They could be.
I mean, I'm sure they don't say what they say, but you would think they would keep them up.
Well, I looked at the aerial views of the area, and there were no billboards there. But I don't know. I mean, they may probably put the billboards there for the movie, and it's somebody's land. So usually, I would think that when you shoot a movie, you kind of like pay to rent somebody's land, and then you put everything back to how it was. Like when you rent somebody's house as a movie, you can, they say in the contract or whatever, you do whatever you want in the movie. You can redress this living room, but then when you're done, you put all my stuff back, and then that's the whole thing with those kinds of agreements. But so yeah, it'd be cool if they're still there, but it's farmland, so I'm guessing they're probably gonna want to farm that area, so they might not want billboards there, especially if nobody's gonna be using them as actual billboards or getting any money from them. So we'll see, but it'll be neat though. It'll be kind of cool to see all that. So, and then the last thing I wanted to bring up, and it just reminded me of it, you're wearing a Batman shirt, the Joker movie, the one with Joaquin Phoenix in it. So what are your feelings about that one?
I've stopped actually feeling things about these announcements because my first initial reaction is always not negative, but why are we doing this? And I said that about the Venom movie. I said that about Blade Runner 2049. I said that about Heath Ledger. I said it about a lot of things, and I've turned out to be completely incorrect about it the majority of times. So if it's, they seem to make these things work. So I don't think it's a bad casting job, but I'm a Joaquin Phoenix fan, so I believe in him as an actor. I've liked almost everything he's done. He has a tendency to go there. I wouldn't necessarily call him a method actor. I don't know if he is or not, but he seems like he's that type of actor, and I like that. And he's done great work. He's done really popular stuff, and he's done really strange stuff. He's worked with your man Paul Thomas Anderson, which got him another Oscar nomination. He's good. So why not? That's where I'm at with it. Why not? I think it's strange to have a solo Joker movie. Is the Batman not going to be in it? But at the same time, Venom, I didn't know could work without Spider-Man, but I don't look at things like that. I'm not that entrenched, as you call it. I'm not that far down in the rabbit hole of comic books that I know that Venom has a solo comic, and I know he has people that he fights where he is this anti-hero type character, and I get that. And Michelle Williams, Tom Hardy, why not? You know, and Venom looks really vicious and cool in the trailer. So how do I feel about Joaquin Phoenix and the Joker movie? Why not?
Well, I think it's because it's Joaquin Phoenix that makes me more interested, because just the movies that he's been, the movies that have come out recently with him in it, I'm completely interested in. You Were Never Really Here. That's the one where he's kind of like, you know, doing the man on fire thing with this girl gets hurt or something, and then he just like goes after some guys that did something to her. And then Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. I think you've even talked about that. Maybe that's the one where he plays the drunk. He's some sort of an artistic person, playwright or something, but drunk guy who gets in a car wreck and becomes paralyzed from the waist down, and then he just keeps going on with his own thing. And Jonah Hill's supposed to be great in that too.
Yeah, that's the one where I text you about, here we go again with Jonah Hill, and you were like, what? And I hesitate to say it because sometimes when I say it out loud, I ruin the feeling, but there's something about watching Jonah Hill in that trailer. And didn't Jonah Hill direct it? Is that the one that Jonah Hill directed?
No, he directed a different one. It's like that one's like a 90s movie that he directed. I think it's 90s is actually in the title on the one that Jonah Hill directed. But he's also in this other one, this Jacques Audiard movie, The Sisters Brothers, which looks like it looks like a mess, but with all the people involved, John C. Reilly and him, I don't know, like a lot of the stuff that he does, it seems like it's gonna be a mess, but it comes out really well. So
meaning Joaquin Phoenix,
yes, and so that all of that kind of like points me towards like, all right, you know, we'll probably be in good hands. The Jonah Hill movie is called Mid-90s. I did see the trailer for that, and it looks good. It looks, I mean, it's kind of like a throwback to 90s movies, to kind of like skater movies, and it uses different, it employs different technologies for filming, like video, like digital video, and maybe even before that, like VHS-C, the kind of like handycam camcorder type video too, because it's like kids recording themselves, you know, skateboarding and stuff like that. So that'll be interesting to see Jonah Hill behind the camera too. But back to Joker, they've got Robert De Niro in this thing. I mean, it's kind of all over the place. So I'll be interested to see what it looks like. I'm kind of more interested to see that one than I am the one that's supposed to have Jared Leto in it. So we'll see what happens. But all right, well, let's move forward to Mission Impossible Fallout, which has done really well at the box office this last week. And I got to see it on Wednesday night last week. So it was like a preview screening on Wednesday night at Alamo. And afterwards, they handed out the cards, kind of like what you said you used to do. They handed out the cards and like had you fill out, comments and your not your name,
Oh, the
but
test
your age.
screening cards? Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody from Paramount was out in the lobby. And well, I mean, not like a boss from Paramount, but like somebody representing Paramount was out in the lobby, handing out the cards. And I'm guessing it's not necessarily like they're not going to change how they cut the movie, but they may change how they market the movie after it's come out, or the types of commercials that they run, or the scenes that they pick for the TV commercials, that kind of a thing. So I think that's probably what they were looking for. So and so yeah, that was a lot of fun doing that. Oh, and they also played it's probably going to be a special feature on the DVD, but they played a kind of like behind the scenes thing after the credits ran at the end of the movie, and that was neat. And you get to kind of hear them talk about Tom Cruise breaking his ankle and doing the halo jump and all the other things that were involved in, the stunts and all the locations that they went to shoot and all that. So it was kind of cool. When did you see this one?
What is today? Today is Wednesday. I saw it Monday morning at 10:40 with my dad.
And were there people there Monday morning?
Tons.
Really? Oh,
yes.
Cool.
Yeah. I would say the theater maybe held 200 people, and I would say there was 50, 60 maybe, which I thought was a lot for Monday morning at 10:40 when the movie had opened already 2 weeks ago, give or take. So
it opened on Friday.
I think that's... Oh, it did open on Friday. Okay, well, then that makes more sense. My sense of time is weird recently, so you're going to have to give me that. I thought it opened the Friday before. I don't know why. But now that you said that, I remember you said you were going to see it with Steph and that we hadn't discussed a podcast. And then I thought, well, let's do a podcast. I'm about a week behind. But anyway, obviously I'm not. I'm right on time. So the point to that is that I think that with matinee pricing, and there are a lot of people who go in groups to this one theater for matinee pricing. I see a lot of smaller children in big groups going, maybe daycares or some kind of summer programs. This particular theater was not part of any of those big groups, but there were a big group of special needs young people who were all the way from in wheelchairs to physical handicaps to social handicaps. You could tell it's a variety of different people, and super sweet and nice and kind. And when you walked in, they were like greeting us, even though they weren't the greeters. They were just like, hi, hi, hi. It was really sweet. It was a really good way to start a Monday morning. And I'm thinking, I hope these people are in my theater because this is going to be so much fun with all these people there. But they weren't. They were going to something else. I'm not even sure. Probably the kids were going to the Impossibles too. I'm not sure what the other group was going to. But the long and the short of it is that there were quite a few people in our theater, and I think that's sort of important with with a movie like this. It's a communal, I was going to say effort. It's a communal event. There is something about when a person goes flying over top of a car off of a motorcycle, which you see in the trailer, so I'm not giving anything away just yet, and the whole crowd goes, oh, that is as good as it gets when it comes to big popcorn movies, and you cannot discount things like that. It is an event, and so there was quite a few people in the theater, and it was a good time.
Yeah, I think like from the beginning, like seeing the trailer, the like first like long trailer for this movie with that Imagine Dragons song "Friction" on there, like that got me really excited about this movie. And you could see that there were going to be a bunch of different action set pieces in the movie, and another interesting part is like, how do they tie all these things together? But really, at the very least, you knew that you were going to have like Tom Cruise flying a helicopter, Tom Cruise on a motorcycle, Rebecca Ferguson, in her motorcycle get up, trying to shoot at Ethan Hunt, which seems weird, but all of these things are kind of are kind of in there, and then you get you can see a little bit of the bathroom fight scene with Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise fighting some guy who you don't know in the trailer, but you come to find out in the movie. So I think all that really got me, really jazzed to see this movie, and it was my most anticipated movie of the year, like just period. Like I kind of expected it to be the best movie of the year. I can't say that it's the best movie of the year because I think that you've got the filmmakers are, instead of trying to serve all masters, they're serving one master, and that one master is the average moviegoer who is wanting escapist cinema, and this movie does that perfectly. But for me, there it seemed like there were certain things that were kind of missing once you start to really dig into the story, certain characters, and their motivations, and the flow of the movie. It's parts of it started falling apart. But then you get to see, Tom Cruise running across a bridge for 200 yards and just like doing it in one shot, and you're just like, this man is a national treasure. He's our most amazing runner in America. Like, the guy looks awesome running after something. So I mean, that there were so many scenes that were just so impressive that it's one of those, like, you can't get mad at it really. It's not a cinematical tour de force, but it is an amazing action movie. So that's kind of my, in a nutshell, what I feel about it. We can get into spoilers here, but what was your kind of like overall feeling about it?
I think I said this about the last one. It is what it is, and it's fun, and it's epic, and it's over the top, and they continue to amaze me that they can come up with new chase sequences, especially car chase sequences, especially motorcycle chase sequences. And it has now gone past the point of no return with kind of joking on Tom Cruise about running in every movie, because he does run in every movie. Does he run in Magnolia?
No.
Does he? Okay. Well, there you go. That's probably the only one he doesn't run in. But the point is that he is a national treasure when it comes to running in movies. It's epic. It's always done really well. It's over the top, but it's something you've never seen before. It's visually stunning. It's not eye candy exactly, because it does move the narrative along, and that I'm using very loosely for this, because you don't necessarily need to chase Henry Cavill the way that he does, but it does. It is purposeful. There is a purpose for it. And like I said, everybody going, oh, no, all that stuff is worth, the price of admission. Yes, it is a popcorn movie. Yes, it's a big summer movie. I do think they're trying to make it interesting and complicated, and they are trying to set up a storyline that is worthy of being listened to, whether or not there are these big set pieces and Tom Cruise is hanging from a helicopter, which is insane, by the way. So I think they're trying. So overall, it's a big, large, huge popcorn movie that is 2.5 hours long, and it feels shorter than that. So that's always a good thing. It keeps your attention. That said, I had a great time. Absolutely, positively had a great time. Can't wait to see it again. It'll be fun. I would love to see it again in the movie theater. If I could afford it and I had the time, I would love to see it again, because it is epic and over the top, and it's worth seeing again on the big screen. That said, these type of movies, and in particular this series of movies, Mission Impossible, I realized something coming out of it. I don't necessarily think I could analyze or try to discuss heavily the narratives, because they go in one ear and right out the other for me. These movies don't stick for me. That doesn't mean I didn't have a great time in the movie theater when I was watching it, but I had a hard time remembering the bad guy from the other movie for this. That's just me, though. As soon as they said who he was and I saw him and I recognized him, I sort of could put it together, but I couldn't really put it together. That's why I think it's important that you see that dream sequence in the very beginning. Oh, spoiler alert.
It's the first
Let's
shot.
just get over that.
It's the first shot. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but you don't know it's a dream though. You don't know it's a dream.
Yeah, so
so
spoilers from now on.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. But anyway, I think that's important. I think it's great that you see his wife again, or what you think is his wife. And I remember her, but I couldn't tell you what movie she was from.
Oh.
It just doesn't stick.
Well, she was in a couple of them.
Totally, but the one where she's prominent, I cannot remember which one was that?
Mission Impossible 3.
Got it. So one day when he's done with these movies, Tom Cruise, if he's ever done with these movies, because, he could train somebody else and he could be,
Like Jeremy Renner? Oh, wait, no.
Yes. Don't be nice. No, be like what's the name of Judi Dench's character in James Bond? Q? M. Yeah, see? These movies.
Q's the quartermaster.
I love it while I'm watching. That's right. Got it. Doesn't stick, dude. Sorry. It's not that it's bad. It's just not something that sticks in my head. I don't know why. It's just really good music that I only listen to when I'm listening to it. It doesn't stick in my head. And I think that Tom Cruise could continue on with this this series, but for me, they're getting to a point where the narrative and the plots are so convoluted, it's almost impossible to know what's going on, even inside a single movie. And this one, this is a good guy, then that's a bad guy, and this is a good guy, and that's a bad guy, and she's good, and he's bad, and she's good now again, and she's bad now again. It's near to impossible to always have a concept of what's going on. But that means they're trying to keep the electric going by you being surprised by the twists, and people who you think are on your side turn out to not be on your side, and people who you think weren't on your side turn out to not be. I mean, it just twists and turns so much inside itself that it's when they do that on purpose to set somebody up, you almost know it already as an audience member. And, without too many spoilers, we can get into later on. There's something that happens with Alec Baldwin later on that, is this real? Is this not real? Is this, and then something that happens with Simon Pegg later on that you're like, okay, and 5 seconds into it, I'm like, no, they switched. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's almost like they're trying too hard to make the in-between really cool stunts purposeful. And it never loses me. I was interested the whole entire time, but I was finding myself kind of preoccupied with when's the next big thing happening? When's the next big fight? When's the next big, there's a boat, water. Okay, something exciting is going to happen. Not as much with, okay, if he's this, then she's that, and then he's doing this. Okay, she's out to get him now, but she still loves him. So wait, what?
Yeah.
So it's a little too complicated for its own good. They need to simplify, like when they went back to simplifying things in Skyfall. They just need to bring it back a little bit. And I think this is the perfect film to do that with, meaning the next one. This one was huge, over the top, and complicated. Now they just need to scale it down for the next one. Bring it back to a simpler thing. I don't know if they can, but the long and the short of that is that I had a good time. I can't complain.
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, I did too, but I think that, I listened to the Empire podcast where they did like a 2-hour interview with Christopher McQuarrie, and he admits that the way that he wrote this movie is, I mean, he's the writer and director, but the way that he wrote this movie was that they picked set pieces and then they wrote the movie around them. I mean, they were writing portions of the movie while they were shooting the movie. He rewrote a good chunk of the movie while Tom Cruise was out with his broken ankle. So, I mean, yeah, you can tell. And McQuarrie seems to be okay with that because ultimately the end result is something that is entertaining to 95% of the people who are going to watch the movie. Now, if you start to dig into some of that stuff, then yeah, maybe it's not gonna make as much sense when you really start asking, pointed questions about character motivations and things like that. But ultimately, you get to see some cool fights, and you get to see, Tom Cruise actually flying a helicopter and actually doing a halo jump and all those things. So, I mean, he's pretty much saying, like, that's not the movie I'm making. I'm not making the cerebral Mission Impossible. I'm making the, action movie Mission Impossible, and I'm going to give people what they paid for. So, I mean, it's hard to, he's pretty much putting himself in a position that cannot be attacked. It's like, what do you expect? Because I'm giving you exactly what everybody has said that they wanted.
And let me just state for the record, I have absolutely, positively no problem with that. None whatsoever. I'm not asking for some kind of existential journey through Mission Impossible world of Tom Cruise mind and some kind of artsy-fartsy film. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a popcorn film, and I'm good with that. And I think he does a really good job. But there is an instinctual thing that happens when you watch this film that it's a connect the dots that doesn't completely connect organically. And it's possibly because of him writing while Tom Cruise is out, or while they're trying to figure out how to connect the big running scene with the big boat scene with the big helicopter scene. And that's fine. It's not a criticism. It's just an observation. It did not hinder my experience on any level. And I don't think that he should have to, the director, I don't think that he should have to rationalize or defend it or anything like that by saying, well, I knew what I was getting into and I knew I was making a popcorn movie, so just deal with it. It shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't have to have him justify what he did. He made a really great, epic, thrilling action film, and he did a great job. And that's it. There's no need to criticize, for lack of a better term, or even analyze why he should have done something different. He did it, and it works. It's 2.5 hours of pure fun, and I have no problem with that whatsoever.
I think that this movie is finally kind of like getting the Mission Impossible franchise into, very, very specifically into a mode of like the James Bond franchise, where now you're at a situation where it is we're going to get one of these movies every 3 years, and it's going to deliver a certain amount of, this and this and this and this. Now, the James Bond franchise has the history and the specific things that it needs to qualify itself as a James Bond movie, whether it's, Q, things like that. They've ramped themselves back up to that since they, since the reboot with Casino Royale. And now, we're into that kind of mode again with the current James Bond. But I think this movie in a lot of ways is doing the same things that the James Bond of the, that the Roger Moore James Bonds, and to some extent the later Connery James Bonds did, where it's kind of like, we're going to plug this character into these situations and make it dynamic and make people want to come to the movie theater and give them just enough to grab onto this character, to hang on and get them all to get the audience to go through all these experiences with this character. But that's really all you have, is you just have like a thread of the character that you're hanging on to. And I think that everybody involved is fine with that. So there's nothing wrong with that. So I did want to ask a few specific questions. Did you get fooled by the Wolf Blitzer scene? Did you really think that they actually like set off nukes and all that? Part of me was kind of like, man, with Infinity War and this, like, that would be serious universe shaking things,
I didn't get fooled by the nuclear bombing situation. I was like, oh, this is a put on. This is not a real TV. And Wolf Blitzer is not there. I did know that was going to be Simon Pegg as Wolf Blitzer. I didn't know that. And I'm kind of glad about that because it's weird to me when you see real life anchor people in movies playing themselves. It's always odd to me. And I don't know if a lot of them pull it off as naturally as one would need them to. So, and I thought he was doing a great job, but there was something that instinctually I just knew something wasn't right. And I just thought that they enlisted this guy, Wolf Blitzer, to come in and say these things. But, why would somebody like him do something like that? So that should have been, a spark of a question that should have had the answer that it's not really him. But I sort of got fooled, but I didn't. I knew that they were setting that guy up from moment one. I knew when Cruise was like, let me at him. I was like, okay, he's really working the moment and he's believable, but something's I knew something was up. And then when Wolf Blitzer was starting to read the actual manifesto and the guy was starting to snicker and be all like, yeah, I'm taking over the world, $1 billion, or whatever he says. I was like, this is not real. So yes and no. I knew it was a setup, but I didn't realize it was as much of a setup as it was.
Then that also kind of gets the whole mask thing out of the way at the beginning of the movie. So they've kind of done the fan service of like, look, we used a mask, because in previous movies it's either been like, oh, the mask thing's broken, we can't use it, or we'll use a mask here. I mean, they always kind of like, figure out ways to kind of fit in the mask gag, and in this one I was kind of like, oh, okay, they use the mask, and then almost immediately after that, they when they drop into Paris, when Ethan and Walker, played by Henry Cavill, drop into Paris, he has that kind of briefcase mask making device. So you're like, oh, we're gonna get another mask, but then you're introduced to the Walker character in the way that he just has a different way of dealing with things. He'll just smash the guy over the head with the mask making device to try to subdue him, because he's a little bit more brute force than Ethan Hunt is, and he can afford to be because he's like a foot taller and much more muscular than Tom Cruise is. I really did like that bathroom fight. It was weird seeing the trailer because you don't really know. I mean, the Henry Cavill character is going to be the bad guy because at the end of the trailer, he's like shooting an automatic weapon at, Ethan, who's in another helicopter. But in the beginning, he's fighting with Ethan. So in a lot of ways, you're just kind of like, from the jump that if you've seen the trailer, that he's a bad guy. So you just want to figure out what the motivation is for him to fight with Ethan. And here's where we're gonna get really spoilery, and I'm gonna ask, did he hire a guy to impersonate himself to then beat that guy up and kill him? Because he's John Lark, and the guy that the band is on, who is obviously like ready to rock and roll, he's ready to fight some people. He must have either worked for John Lark or knew John Lark enough to know that he was going to be attacked by people. So did this guy that John Lark got to, impersonate him not know who John Lark was? That was confusing to me.
Well, I don't think anybody did up to that point. I think he's Kaiser Sose, which is actually a good reference because the director of this wrote Usual Suspects and actually won the Oscar for it. So I'm sorry, what is the director's name? Christopher McQuarrie. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I was looking at something else online. I didn't want to get it wrong because he's an Academy Award winner. I don't know. That's a good question because maybe he hired him to play John Lark, but didn't know that he was. I mean, I'm sure he didn't know the situation he was going to be in. He didn't know that he was.
Maybe he did it over the internet or something. I don't know, or got him to.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's not that much of a leap of faith, because if John Lark is this mysterious Kaiser Sose, for lack of a better term, then nobody knows who he is. So why would this guy? So guy got offered hundreds of thousands of dollars to pretend to be this guy, to show up at this meeting to represent. I mean, that happens all the time, in just regular business situations. And, to come scout out the situation before the actual real person shows up. And I guess people are more paranoid than they need to be, but maybe they're not. Who knows? I mean, kings hire people to eat food so they don't die. So in case somebody poisons them. So, I mean, I don't think that's that much of a leap. Let me just go back to something really quick, though, with the mask making situation. What I thought was great about that in this film is that they're calling out the almost ridiculousness of that scenario, but they're calling it out in real time of the film. In other words, both Angela Bassett and Henry Cavill at one point say, oh, they're just trick-or-treating. They're just playing Halloween. They're just putting masks on. They're actually calling out how dated that idea is for this world, but at the same time, they're also calling it out that it's near to impossible to believe that somebody could wear a mask and be believable in front of somebody else in real life. Now, the TV Wolf Blitzer situation, or some kind of video phone situation where somebody's wearing a mask, that could be pulled off and believable depending on the situation. But to actually put on a mask like that and walk around and actually be the human being and nobody knows that you're wearing a mask, it's not plausible in today's world. People are much sharper than that. So what the movie is doing is it's allowing that trick to be done, because we've come accustomed to that in the Mission Impossible films, and to revisit it once and then to revisit it again later on and to also call it out, I actually think is quite brilliant. I think that's really good writing, because the audience is sharp nowadays. They're like, come on, you don't believe a person is wearing a mask, and God, what? It's not going to happen. So I think that's really smart that he calls it out, and he pretty much calls it out on every level. He calls it out in the film and outside the film. So I thought that was great, just to cover that really quick. And I thought it was great that he picked up that technology and hit the guy with it, because what were they going to do? And it was a great way to get rid of that technology, and it was a great way to put Ethan Hawks. I knew I was going to do that. Ethan Hunt in a situation. And didn't he say a couple of times, I'll figure it out? He said it like 3 or 4 times. And I'm actually thinking the movie I think the movie should have been called Mission Impossible, parentheses, I'll figure it out, parentheses, because that was a smart way to handle that character. That character usually knows in advance what he's doing and what's going on. And he's one step ahead of everybody. To put him in a situation where his one step ahead of everybody has been taken out by somebody smashing it, now he has to think on his feet, is really quite brilliant. It puts him in that, it really sets up the tightrope much higher, and the stakes are much higher when you do that. So I thought that was great that they called that all out. So I don't think it's, back to the John Lark thing, I don't think it's implausible to think this guy hired somebody on the dark web, or hired somebody who knew somebody, and I need for you to impersonate this John Lark guy. I need for you to show up at this dance or whatever, big disco place, and show up to this private party, and I need for you to act like me. That's not that implausible. Now, whether or not Henry Cavill knew that he would eventually have to kill that guy in that situation is a whole nother question. But I'm thinking when the guy woke up and came out of the drug and started to move, and he took the computer and smashed it over his head, that's when Henry Cavill probably thought, I've got to get rid of this guy. And also, really, if you think about it, if he did hire this guy is a loose end. So if he does know I was hired to play John Lark, and he does get captured and is questioned by whatever government agent happens to get him, then he's going to say, no, somebody hired me to do this. So they're going to know immediately early on in the film that John Lark is not who he says he is, and not doing the things he said he was doing. So I don't think it's that implausible. Why? Did you have a problem with that?
No, only after the fact, obviously. I mean, during the movie, it never crossed my mind. But then we find out that he's John Lark a little bit later on in the movie, and you're kind of like, okay, now we got to go back and um, think about how all this works. So I mean, I could see that. I guess if the guy didn't know what John Lark looked like, then I could see that. And obviously, well, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but it doesn't really matter what happens um, in the bathroom fight, because Rebecca Ferguson's Ilsa comes in and just like shoots the guy in the head. So I mean, without her, they might have been in a rough spot. One of them might have actually died, but she kind of swoops in to save the day, for lack of a better term. And then it was good to see her again. You knew she was going to be in the movie, but you weren't really sure what her motivations were going to be from the trailers. So I think they did a good job with her character in this movie to kind of keep her interested, because you got to remember the last time we see her in the last movie, she's actually driving away. So she's like done with this life. But something has sucked her back in. And we find out about a little bit more about that later. So the other person who's never met the John Lark is the White Widow, played by Vanessa Kirby. And I don't really know why her character was in the movie. I think that she was added pretty late. I think she was just kind of like a placeholder, her and her brother. But I mean, she did well. I mean, she in the little kind of like mini fight scenes that she has, but my big issue with her character was that, we see her and she's, involved in the plot in a very critical way in the middle of the movie. And then she just goes away like for good until the very, very end. So that was a little weird for me, but it does give, it does, move the plot along a little bit to get you in a place where they're able to reintroduce the Lane character from the last movie.
She's a big star waiting to be, first of all. What is her name? Vanessa Kirby?
She kind of looks like Lane, so I kind of thought maybe she was his daughter or something.
Oh, I could see how you thought that. Yeah, I thought that was interesting because really she is just what she says she is. She's a broker. She hooks these people up and then she steps back. And I don't think that her character was unnecessary. It did make sense that, this person wanted the plutonium, this other person wanted the plutonium, but they needed this person instead, and they needed for him to make sure he got home safe or back safe wherever he needed to go. And she was like, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, I'm out.
Yeah, she's not a good guy or a bad guy. That's the problem, is that we're in an action movie. We need good guys, we need bad guys. We need the monster and we need the hero. Like, and in this movie, she's neither. She's just kind of there.
I don't know, because I was going to mention this earlier as one of those things that I thought they did really well of kind of making sure that it rang way louder than it has in the past movies. This one's more, Ethan Hunt is more of a Robin Hood in this film than he is in the other ones. He has to make choices based on, and they say it, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. They say that in the film. I think that's actually from Star Trek, but
yeah, your inability to choose between one life and a million has caused this. That was one of their kind of like lines. That was the Hunley line, the Alec Baldwin line to him on the tarmac.
Right, which is a good thing for him and a bad thing for Angela Bassett, and then a good thing for the film, and then a bad thing for the film, and then a good thing at the end for the film. This is his good quality. So it was this kind of anti-hero type situation, especially with the White Widow. You didn't know
That's
Widow.
Right.
Is that right? Yeah. For some reason I saw a spider and then I went, wait, the White Widow. Yeah, that's right. Like Black Widow. Get it. Okay, got it. And she's wearing a little spider in the beginning. Okay. So the point is that I don't necessarily have a problem with her not being a good person, not being a bad person. There are people like Michael Clayton who is, what he does is not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. He's a fixer. Ray Donovan, now he makes a lot of bad choices and does a lot of bad things, but he actually is doing them all for good. Tony Soprano. They're all bad people, but they're when approached with these situations that, a cop opens a door and sees all this stuff going on. What do? Do you shoot the cop because the cop is in the wrong place? You don't know that person. That person could be a good person, and that person could have kids, and that person could have a good life. You can't shoot that person. But the White Widow's brother, who I don't know his name, but he reminds me of Adam Driver. He reminds me of a British blonde version of Adam Driver.
Zola is his name. I mean, Frederick Schmidt is the actor's name, but the character's name is Zola.
That's him. Yeah. Well, he reminds me of, there's something about him that reminds me of Adam Driver. He actually looks like the older, more sophisticated version. Go look at his picture on IMDb.
Yeah, I'm looking right now.
Adam
yeah,
Driver.
It does.
It looks like
He's
a British
got,
blonde version.
Kind of like that longer face.
Yeah.
And...
He's got that kind of, yeah. Anyway, so obviously that guy would have shot the cop because the cop was in his way. And that means that his moral compass only goes so far. And that she, the White Widow, says something about, family. So I think the point to the White Widow is that she represents yet another character in the movie that is in between good and bad, that there is the yin and the yang of both sides of everything. And sometimes you have to make bad choices to help out somebody who's a good person. And sometimes you have to make good choices to help out somebody who's bad. I mean, that's just the way it works. And that is repeated constantly throughout this film. It's a major motif of the film. And I like that. I think that gives us some kind of compass of where our moral gauge should be going and ranging up and down depending on what Ethan Hunt does. And so when you first meet her, you think she's way worse than she actually is, that she is only doing things because this is her business. And yes, not good things. Yes, people get killed, but this is her business. And I kind of understand that. Yes, should there be a fine line where when anybody dies by the hand of anybody else, it's a bad thing? Yes, there is. That should be a line. But in movies like this, in order to make them interesting, these characters can't be 100%, if he was 100% chivalrous in his actions, he would not be interesting. It's a dilemma for him to have to do something that is not good. Thus the reason why when he has to say goodbye to his wife, which is great that they repeat that again in this movie. I love the fact that they repeat all that stuff. And you if you hadn't seen another movie, you would know what was going on with him and his wife. I love when they do stuff like that. And it doesn't seem to be a retread or purposely being said again to remind you. It actually seems like an organic part of the narrative. So I find that much more interesting. I find it much more interesting when a character is doing something 90% one way, and then because of the situation, they have to do something different 10% of the time. I think that colors it in a better way.
But he never does those things, though. I mean, there's the dream of him kind of like, ooh, I might have to kill a cop. But then they're kind of having their cake and eating it too. You get this kind of like, dream sequence of him kind of going through and being like, here's what it would actually need to be like, and I would be a part of this, and I would have to go and just lay waste all these people so that they don't think that I'm, a government agent or something like that. So you get that, and you get that feeling of like, what would it be like with, Ethan Hunt having to kill an innocent person essentially in cold blood. But then, that whole feeling is robbed from the audience because now it's like, oh, he's just figured out a better way to do it. So, there's that did never happen. So we can't say that his character actually went through that. We can just say that like mentally he was thinking about it and thinking about whether he would be willing to do that or not. And ultimately it didn't matter because he found a different way to do it. He was able to sidestep all of that and not even have to deal with those types of situations.
I think that's interesting, though. I think that makes that more complex. And he does kill those 4 or 5 guys around the cop to save the cop's life.
Yeah,
so,
the bad guys.
Yes,
yeah.
Those people. Yeah, so they are bad guys, and he does kill them, and they were going to kill her. And so he makes that choice when obviously the easier choice would have just killed the cop who happened to accidentally be in the wrong place at the wrong time and continue on. but he has some form of moral compass that doesn't allow him to do something like that. I find that interesting, and I liked that dream sequence, if you will, or what do they call that? Flash forward? Is it a dream sequence, like a daydream sequence? I like that kind of stuff because it shows you where this character could go if he did not rein himself in and did not have this now spoken of very much moral compass. If he didn't have that, and it also shows you that he's smarter than everybody else in the movie up to this point because he thought of a better way to do it. And then when you go, well, why didn't he tell anybody? Why didn't he just say this? Because he didn't trust the brother, and he tells that to the White Widow, and I thought I could do it better. And he was right, and he ended up being right. So, I don't know, I kind of like that. I thought it was great that you see what could have been and what should have been and then what was. I like that a lot, actually.
And then so they're able to get out and they extract Lane, and then when they kind of like run all those cops through those corridors, and they end up smashing into getting the truck stuck, and they break out the front of window of the truck, him and Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill's motorcycle works just fine, but his motorcycle takes a while to start. Do you think that was like a sabotage like thing that Henry Cavill did, or do you think that was just another way to get Ethan Hunt on his own on a motorcycle chase?
The latter. I think it was just a way, and I thought it upped the stakes. Not everything works out for Ethan Hunt every time. And the fact that he gets on the thing, now they could have given it a little bit more purpose, like he could have hit the clutch the wrong way and flooded the motorcycle. I don't know motorcycles, so don't get me wrong. I'm not going to speak on like what would flood the motorcycle, but something that didn't go right that would have made it more plausible that it's not starting for this reason. It's not necessary, but it would have been. It just happens to be, it's not starting just for him. And it stinks of we're doing that to put him in more peril. But it works because you are thinking to yourself, those cops are coming over that car at that point or that van. And sure enough, they do. And that's an interesting visual to look at. And it's something I haven't seen before. You see people always going through those small alleyways in movies, and the cars are always getting stuck. I don't know if I've seen people coming over. It seems like a simple thing, but I found it visually interesting, and I thought, yeah, sure, why not put him at stake? But when you find out about Lark later on, who knows? It could have been the situation where he set him up, but really he needs Ethan Hunt to complete that mission to get
Lane.
What's his name? Lane, Solomon, right? To get him where they need him to be. So, no, I think it's just a happenstance, and I think it adds to it. I thought it was good.
Yeah, and that motorcycle chase was really cool. And it's Tom Cruise, like, doing all the driving without a helmet.
Crazy.
I mean, and going down the Champs-Elysees, like, around that roundabout, against traffic. And now I did see, I mean, like in that thing after the movie, they said that he was doing that, like that was real. But I mean, I assumed it was like a Matrix Reloaded type thing where they would like add in vehicles later on maybe, or something like that. But they were saying that it was real. Now, I don't know if they meant that, yes, that was really Tom Cruise driving the motorcycle around the Champs-Elysees, or did they mean that there were actual like stunt drivers in cars and he was, driving in between them, practically. I think that would be amazing if he did. I haven't seen anything that verifies that, but that, it was very impressive. I thought that was a really cool kind of scene, and even kind of how it ends, where you think they've got him, but he was so close to the end, so close to the drop point or whatever you want to call it, that he was able to kind of like hobble to the drop point. I thought that was really neat. It just kind of worked out for him in the end, but it was a lot of fun up until that point.
Here's what I have to say about the motorcycle chase sequence. I thought it was brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I couldn't tell the difference between whether or not it was real or not. I You could tell he's going faster than he probably should be, being the multi-million-dollar star that he is. The insurance companies must hate him, and you could tell that that's him on the motorcycle the whole entire time. I was questioning whether or not those were real cars or whether or not it was choreographed or what was happening. There were a few times that I thought I saw some computer-generated little glitches, but I'm not good with that kind of stuff anyway, so I just let it ride. Here's what I think is the best thing about that chase sequence. 2 times before that, 2 other chase sequences in the movie, he cuts through, and I think it's one other time and then one time in this one. It might be both times in this one, where he just cuts across traffic, and he gets across traffic, and the next car smashes into the next car coming across the traffic. He does that twice, and you're thinking to yourself, either consciously or subconsciously, no one could possibly do that and go across traffic as fast as he was going and as fast as traffic was coming across the light and get away with it, not only once, but twice. So the third time, when he doesn't get through traffic and he gets hit by the car, or he hits the car and he goes flying, you're like, yes, that's exactly what would happen. Thank God it happened, because this is what your mind as a driver goes through. You would never get across that traffic. So the fact that they did it 3 times and then on the third time he goes flying across is so satisfying as an audience member, because you're thinking, yes, that's exact. It's about time this guy crashes. He didn't crash at all. Come on. And then he does. And it brings me to yet another point that I wanted to bring up in the beginning that I didn't, is that this is just in the nick of time movie. That's what this movie is. Just in the nick of time. Just right when you think, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, you get down to 2, 1, and you clip the wire and everybody's saved. It's just in the nick of time. So, but it's satisfying. It really is satisfying, because when he gets hit by the car, or hits the car and goes flying, and you're thinking, oh, this is it. What are they going to do now? Because he's surrounded. Because you can see the cops in the background, and then you see the cops coming forward. What is he going to do? And he takes out clippers or something.
He just pulls out a knife.
What's he? Yeah. He takes out. That's right. Yeah, he pulls out a knife, and you're thinking, what is he going to do?
Fight him off.
Has he not seen Indiana Jones? Come on now. Like, he's going to get shot. And I thought he's going to have some kind of vest on or some kind of mask or something that is not Tom Cruise. I don't know what I was thinking. But then that shot comes over top of the wire that you see get cut, and then you see the boat and Simon Pegg and all that other stuff, and you're like, yes, just in the nick of time. He needs to get away in those moments in these films, and it works. It just absolutely works. That chase sequence is thrilling. I could watch it over and over and over again. It's just extremely well done. And bravo that he does it, and bravo that they can continuously write it to where it's interesting. And that's fascinating to me, because how much more interesting after decades and decades of car chases in movies can they possibly come up with something new? And they do. So
yeah.
And even if it's not new in concept, it's still as thrilling as if it's the first time you've ever seen a car chase or a motorcycle chase like that. And so bravo to them. I liked it.
Speaking of stunts, we kind of we didn't even talk about the Halo jump. That's the kind of skydiving thing that Tom Cruise actually did. And it's not just regular skydiving. You do have to have oxygen supply when you're up that high. I think they said they jumped from 25,000 feet. That's pretty much like jumping out of a commercial airliner, when you're up at the very top of where you fly at. So, and I thought that was amazing. And I understand why Henry Cavill didn't want to do it, because you kind of got to be a little crazy to do that. But because I think that Tom Cruise obviously had to train for it, but then they only had, since they were doing that jump as the sun was going down, they only had a certain number of, they could do 1 jump a day or something, and they had a couple weeks to do it, and that's it. So, and you've got to coordinate the guy who's got the camera on his head and that other jumper, and they're getting really close to each other, and it's one of those things where it's all this stuff can be fixed in post-production. You can do CGI. You can have 2 people jump out of airplanes. You could even have Tom Cruise on a green screen or on a blue screen and hanging from wires, and have a wind machine on him, and it would look okay. It would look fine, and everybody would believe it. because that's what people have done in the past. But the fact that you do get to see his real reaction, and there's no possibility of, CGI mishaps, that right there is worth a lot, I think. And it's, as far as like the, what they did in the in that stunt, having, him and Lane, like Lane being, Lane was kind of, or not Lane, sorry, Lark, but we didn't know he was Lark, Walker. Jeez, it's hard to keep track. But Walker at the time, like kind of like a bumbling idiot, at the beginning of that. And it's like, this is the first time we've really seen his character. Like he looks all, big and tough when he's walking with Angela Bassett, but then he gets on that plane and he has no idea what's going on. And then he gets struck by lightning, and then they have to reconnect his oxygen. There's a lot of stuff going on in that scene. But it was a kind of a weird setup for the Walker character. Once they get on the ground, he's like, a Haas, obviously, but it was just kind of, that was kind of weird for me. But the fact that they're in this halo jump, that you can get struck by lightning while you're skydiving, I mean, that's crazy. And the fact that you can actually come through that bad weather and then pop out on the other side and everything's just fine. So all that seemed kind of cool. And they did cut a scene where I guess they landed on the whatever that building is called, the Grand Palais in Paris, and they were supposed to do a whole nother scene where they like get in through the roof and like drop down from the roof. And there's a little chunk of it in the trailer that you see kind of like Ethan Hunt fall like on this wire type thing, falling or something, almost falling, maybe an homage to the first Mission Impossible movie. Don't know. But all these people are below them, partying, and nobody's even paying attention, but he's like hanging above all of them. So that would have been kind of cool, but I guess they cut it for time or, continuity purposes or something. But so I did think that Halo scene was pretty awesome though. And the fact that they did it, that they really did it, I mean, that made it pay off for me.
Okay, so a couple of things. First, the sense of knowing he's actually doing it adds to something that you can't get from green screen. You just can't. Regardless of whether or not you can make it look pristine and make it actually look like he's doing it, through green screen or computer generated effects is one thing, but the fact that he's actually doing it is amazing. And you can get a sense. Now, I don't know if you can get that sense if you don't know that, if you don't know he's actually doing it, but the fact that we do know it does add to it. Second thing, I think the reason why Walker is a bumbling idiot up in the plane is for a couple of different reasons. I think he's trying to throw Ethan Hunt off the scent of John Lark, maybe. There's some kind of character being played there. And also, I think it's supposed to show that in the end, you want to bet on Hunt. No matter what happens, you want to bet on Hunt. Because Hunt, he says, no, we can't because of the storm. And he goes, what are you, afraid of a little electricity? Lightning? Of course, at that point, he's going to get hit by lightning. Third thing, why does his oxygen tank not explode? Doesn't need to be answered, just a question. Fourth thing, did they actually do all of that stuff in the sky where he's attaching the oxygen and he's trying to get a hold of him and all that stuff is done in real time in the sky?
Yeah, I would think that. I mean, obviously not the going through this. They're not going to go through the clouds and simulate lightning somehow in real time. But
no, I know.
But yes, all the connectivity, all that stuff, like the connecting and the. Now, I don't know about the. They had to do face replacement on Henry Cavill, I'm sure. They had to do some CGI on his character in the mask because he didn't actually jump, so. They had to do something like that.
Well, they could have done a second shot and added it to it. They could have actually done a hanging from wire shot of Henry Cavill because you don't really see his face when he's connecting. You see Tom Cruise, but you don't see Walker's face during that whole sequence. So all of that stuff that Tom Cruise did with the oxygen tank, taking it off and trying to reach him and all that stuff, that all happens in real time up in the sky.
I have no idea. I know that especially the initial jump off of the plane and the initial like him by himself, you know, dropping, flying, whatever you want to call it, skydiving. That is real. As far as like the minutia of them, him working on the other guy's airline. I'm not sure. That was not in the behind the scenes footage.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Oh, because that would be amazing. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to shoot some of that up there too. Why not? I mean, he's up there, they're doing it. I think, yeah, why not? And I think that it's now becoming a trick of the trade for these films that he's going to hang off the side of a plane. He's going to jump out of a plane. He's going to hang off the side of a building with suction cups. I mean, what? But it just seems to add something to it, because I said to my dad, he's really doing all that stuff. He's like, what? And my father doesn't come from understanding CGI. He doesn't know that stuff is fake. He just knows it's fake somehow. Mm-hmm. And I said, he was like, no, I thought they put him in front of a screen and they put up a backdrop and stuff. I said, no, Tom Cruise is actually doing it. And he goes, my boy Tom. I said, yep, he's doing a good job, Dad. But yeah, so it adds something to it. So I loved it. I love that whole sequence. I love the fact that when he does get hit by lightning, everybody in the audience jumps and has that same feeling, that communal feeling of, well, Hunt did tell you about this. He did tell you. That's what you get. You better listen. This guy's been doing these Mission Impossible films for 25 years. You better listen to this guy. It adds to the communal effect of watching a movie with other people. And it's really a jump scare moment almost, but it's also thrilling at the same time, because you're like, what are you going to do now? Now he has to save this guy. Not only did he jump from 25,000 feet, he's got to now save this guy. He's got to save Superman. Doesn't Superman know how to fly? What is happening here? I loved it. I thought it was really well done.
So, all right. Well, we'll get back to after the motorcycle chase sequence. They end up going to London, meeting with Alec Baldwin again, and that's when he accuses Ethan of being John Lark. But then they're able to kind of subdue Alec Baldwin, and then that's when we finally get the the real use of the mask. And you could kind of tell, like, from the way that was shot, the way that they like, okay, we're going to go, me and Benji and Luther are going to go do our thing. You stay here with Lane Walker, and we'll be back. You could kind of tell with how that was shot that you were going to hang with Walker, and then he was going to go in and do that scene and reveal himself. So that's really, when you ask me, like, what a Mission Impossible movie is, like, that scene right there is Mission Impossible. It's the, we've already figured out pretty much like what the play is, and now we're going to enact our scenario to get the information that we need, or to at least put you in a position where you're going to give us the information without you even know that we're asking. So I thought that was a cool scene there. And we get the first F-bomb in a Mission Impossible movie, because Henry Cavill says... Yeah,
I was a little surprised about that. Yeah, well, but
that's pretty normal with PG-13 movies nowadays, because they're allowed one F word in a movie, which is such an arbitrary rule, but whatever. It's... so, yeah, that's... They're able... he was able to pull that off, I guess, but he was like, why do you have to make it so effing hard? That was his, which kind of is a, you could say that about the movie plot itself, like, does it need to be this complicated? But maybe it does. I don't know.
Well, let me say one thing about the bait and switch scene. It is hands down the most cliche Mission Impossible scene in the film. Without a scene like that, you can't have a Mission Impossible film. I get it. Here's my issue with it. I had issue with it because I thought to myself, No, I didn't figure it out until just at the last moment when you go back in and you see Lang. I was like, oh, they switched. Oh, they switched. Okay, okay, I get it. When he sat down and you see Simon Pegg put on the mask, it should have dawned on me then, but it didn't. So my only issue with it is that if Henry Cavill's character, Walker, Lang, Lark, if he was so specific about who he was and how he went about letting people know who he was whenever he was Lark or whenever he was Walker, and infiltrated all of these scenarios to be a member of something bigger and more complex later on, then why would he do a confession on any level to anybody in any scenario anywhere? And you see him removing the camera and pulling off. I mean, he doesn't know that there's a computer screen right behind him. He doesn't know that this guy can be mic'd. He doesn't know that there could be other mics. I mean, it just is, you have to really take a large leap of faith at that moment, because he's so specific about being Kaiser Sose, and I'm going to use that because that's the exact thing that he is. Then in that one moment, he allows his humanness, his fallibility as being a human to come through, and that's where he reveals himself. It's done in a I'm going to win kind of way, because I am this person and I did this and I did that. And he is being cocky, and he is, I see why he could get away with doing it, because he's puffing up his chest and all that other stuff. But it just, 5 seconds after it happened, I went, why would he do all that? If he is this person, why would he just all of a sudden confess it? It didn't make any sense. If we were in 1960 and, there were no ways to put a digital camera somewhere that we didn't know a digital camera was there, then I would buy into it. But the fact that there's so many ways that he could have gotten caught for talking that way, it just was like, oh, okay, it's necessary because you got to find that out, but it is very much it's wedged in there. It has to happen, so they have to do it that way, and I'm fine with it. But it just was one of those moments I went, oh, okay.
Well, but we already know that he's a bad guy because he gave that phone to Angela Bassett. I mean, because
yeah, but do we know he's Lark?
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much because
No.
Ethan Hunt, his phone was all crushed, and then he's like, "Hey, look, here's Ethan's phone, and it's pristine." So it's a fake Ethan Hunt phone that he's chocked full of, he is Lark ness. Why else would he want somebody else to? Why else would he want Angela Bassett to think that Ethan's Lark, if not to get her off the trail of him? So, and
that's not the point, though. The point is that why would somebody who was so careful about hiding all of these identities just all of a sudden let it all out? Maybe it's because of the fact that he has been keeping it quiet for such a long time. It just is one of those things. It's one of those things that it's hard for me to justify it in my brain after seeing it. It's not important.
Mm-hmm.
We can move on, but it's just one of those things.
Well, yeah, and then we get kind of like another, action set piece, which, they shoot out all the lights or somehow the lights go off, and then they have a gun battle in that kind of like underground area, and Walker gets away. Ethan goes after him, and then this is the Ethan Hunt chase sequence only on foot. And this is the sequence in which he breaks his ankle. And the scene, like the actual, the take that he breaks his ankle on is used in the movie. Now, not the jump part, but when he's jumping across and he gets himself up and, runs towards the camera to like after the jump. That take was the one where he broke his ankle. Because I saw that in like a, they released a behind the scenes thing a while ago talking about him breaking his ankle, and they showed that part of it, him finishing the scene. Not only did Tom Cruise break his ankle after jumping across from building to building, he had the wherewithal to like push himself up and then in character like run past the camera like he was supposed to do, instead of him just like hanging there saying like, I broke my ankle, I need some help. He just kept going. And so they used that in the movie, which I thought that was kind of cool. So, but because of that, they had to stop down production for 3 months, and everybody had to be held, and they paid ungodly amounts of money, I'm sure, to keep all the actors from going to different movies. And it turns out that wasn't, because Macquarie talked about this in that podcast I listened to, that did not happen to coincide with the Justice League reshoots. So there wouldn't have even been a way for Henry Cavill to shave his mustache at the beginning, shoot all the Justice League reshoots, and then have a beard back by the time Tom Cruise was healed. So they happened at different times. But he did talk about that, though, the whole Henry Cavill mustache situation, or beard situation, and the fact that they were trying to think about how they could make it work, and what Warner Brothers would have to pay Paramount to make it worth them stopping down their production just for Henry Cavill's beard to grow back. Or for them to give them money, they were going to give him like $3 million or something to do the, beard, CGI beard on Henry Cavill. And, somebody from Paramount said like, no, we're not going to do that. So, that was the end of that.
They could have written it into the script, though. I mean, they could have figured out a way to write it into the Mission Impossible script where, Henry Cavill meets a girl in a club and they're talking and all that other stuff. And she can go, you're handsome, but I'm not into beards. And then the next scene is him in a hotel room shaving his beard.
No, I think it's purposeful because you want to differentiate his character Walker from Superman, for example. So
yeah, but if he's established as that character up to that point in the film, I don't know where they were filming, but you know what it is? It's probably they film things after. Like they don't film things in sequence. So if he gets to a certain point in the film and you shave off the beard, then all the stuff that happens after that in the film has to be beardless too. So yeah, it's complicated. It's one of those things. Let's get back to the running chase sequence really quick. First of all, it's brilliant. Mm-hmm. Second of all, I love the fact that it is a chase sequence. It's a running chase sequence. It's a Tom Cruise running chase sequence. Cliche, but then they find these great moments of levity where he's in the office and the one woman looks at him like, dude, what are you going to do now? Like, that's a window and you got to jump. And then she kind of looks at the chair and he kind of looks at the chair and she kind of gets up and then he's like, thanks. And it brings this humor to it that allows the audience to just accept the absurdity of the situation even more, because what would people do in that situation? You couldn't just get out of his way. You couldn't just scream and run. You couldn't just jump out of the chair. They actually add those moments in, which brings humor to it, but it also brings a reality to it that I think is important. And so when he does break the window, because most people would just push the person out of the chair, or the chair would be there and they would just, they make it a bit, and it works, and it makes it, I wouldn't say it humanizes it, because you don't really need that, something like that to be human, but it does bring this reality to it that I think is important. And then when he breaks that window and you're thinking he's got to jump out that window, what is happening here? And then almost the near miss situation where he almost doesn't jump across. It's just done extremely well. And they are checking off the boxes of a chase sequence in a Mission Impossible movie. But if it wasn't there, and we didn't have those near misses, then we wouldn't be seeing a Mission Impossible film. So for them to continuously come up with new and inventive ways to do it, and then him running on top of that building is spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beautiful. It's well done. And the fact that you get Simon Pegg is following him on the computer, and then you bring more humor into it when this person should be able to know it should be a three-dimensional picture, and then, oh no, it's 2D. Oh no, I was looking at it. Oh no, left, right, left. Oh wait, no, I was looking at it the wrong way. It brings a substance to it that just adds to it, because in that situation where people are trying to run across buildings and follow somebody else, and GPS is above them or whatever they're using for the technology to follow them, it would be hard to know exactly what to do the whole entire time, because you're not necessarily in a normal situation. So to bring all of those elements in, it just grounds it in a way that makes it even that much more spectacular. So once again, I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Me too. And they do a good job as far as like the shooting of that, especially the run across the bridge or top of that, whatever that thing is. They're able to, they've got kind of one of those cameras on rails. You see them in the Olympics where you've got like the Olympic skaters and it like rides right alongside the skaters.
Oh yeah.
It's that same kind of a camera where it's really fast. Like these cameras can go really fast. So it's able to keep up with Ethan, and you get kind of like the background kind of flitting by very quickly, and you see all of the Thames and whatever that is in the background, that river, and you're able to see his speed using that, and with him kind of the same part of the frame. But then you also get a lot of those wide shots where you see him kind of like, you get to see a lot more of the ground that he's covering and how fast he's going. And yeah, I mean, it's impressive, but it gives you scope and scale that could have been done a lot more. Could have been done a lot clunkier, but they do a really good job of keeping you apprised of his progress, and then also just how impressive what he's doing is. So this is a good reason to bring up the director of photography, and his last name's Hardy, and I keep wanting to say Tom Hardy, but that's obviously not correct. So I'll look it up here. When I looked at his IMDb, the first thing I saw, Rob Hardy. First thing I saw was Ex Machina. That was his first big feature length film that he did, and so he also did Annihilation. So both Alex Garland's movies, he shot those, and he's done some short videos, TV movies, things like that, and a couple of other movies, British movies. But he's got a good eye, and I think that the big thing that Christopher McQuarrie was saying is that he wanted to change up certain things. He wanted to make this movie different from the previous Mission Impossible movie purposefully, so that he could try different things. And that's why he brought in a new DP. That's why he brought in a new composer. So that's it's interesting choices to make, especially with something that's such a huge thing, because you would usually want to keep all the same people. Bond movies are notorious for that. Same director of photography, same set designer, same costumer, same special effects, same composers. They were very specific about those types of things, but they decided to change that up in this movie, and I thought that was bold, and I think ultimately it does look similar to a lot of the other Mission Impossible movies, but you could tell they're trying to make some changes. So I thought that was kind of cool.
I think I was just looking up Rob Hardy's bio, and I think he'll be nominated for Annihilation this year.
Oh, cool.
He was not nominated for. Yeah, I think so. It's a beautiful looking film.
It is. I need to see it again.
And I saw it again. I saw it a second time after I read the book. And we can talk about that later. But it's a great looking film, and I think that his ideas of how things should be colored and how things should be shaded in that film, Annihilation, are essential to that movie, and without his eye for those details, it would not look the way that it looked. I will not be surprised if he's nominated, and actually it should be nominated for production design and all that stuff, because it's a great looking movie and it's a unique looking movie, especially all of those people hanging on the wall and all those weird things that happen
the flower
in that film.
people.
But yeah,
I mean, like that was really cool.
Yeah, the flower people. Yeah. It's described very specifically in the book, but not like that, meaning it's not that specific. And right now I'm kind of having a hard time remembering the difference between the book and the movie, because when it comes to those type of things, I remember details more than stylistic choices. But they did a great job, because if it wasn't in the book and they came up with that on their own, they did a great job. So I think the type of things that a cinematographer have to look at for Mission Impossible films is not necessarily how an artistic choice per se, because it's going to be an artistic choice, but the way that skydiving scene, what did you call it? What is it called?
The oxygen. It's high altitude, low opening.
Oh, okay, good to know. Halo. That Halo scene is shot brilliantly. It's beautiful to look at. It's stunning. It's dark. It's ominous, but at the same time, you can see everything. It's clear. There's quite a few scenes down underneath in dungeons and basements in this film, in Mission Impossible Fallout, that could have been washed away if it wasn't looked at in a certain way. And I think because of Rob Hardy, it is looked at that way. So he does, it's good that you've given him a shout out. That last sequence when he's hanging on the mountain or cliff or whatever you want to call it, is stunning. It's beautiful because you can see the texture of the rocks and you can see everything. You can see the sun coming through certain moments, and it's just done really, really well. Plus that sequence is ridiculously, outrageously great. So do you want to move on to that?
Yeah, we can do that. And that's the one thing they do is they for that final scene, whether it's the bomb defusal or the fight at the very end between Walker or whatever the heck his name is now, and Ethan Hunt, it's done at the magic hour. So I mean, it is, it's that kind of like the sun's going down. This is, we've got, 15 minutes or whatever to shoot this to make it look just right. And it pays off when you've got a cliff like that, when you've got that valley like that. I mean, McQuarrie talked about that, is that they ultimately, since they were shooting in a valley where you would normally have, 8 hours of consistent sun, where you can pretty much shoot any time during that time and you'll have even light and uniform light, they only had like 3 hours of sun where it was the same, where they were able to get those types of shots because they were in such a deep valley with a bunch of mountains on either side. I think they said that was in New Zealand. So even though it's supposed to be Kashmir, like right around India and stuff, but yeah, that whole scene in Kashmir, whether it's Ethan meeting his wife, Jessica, I think is her name, him meeting his wife, and Julia is her name, and played by Michelle Monaghan, who's always great. I mean, I love her in everything. And the first time I recognized her, the first time I paid attention to her was in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. She was really good in that, the Shane Black movie. But yeah, so she's great. It's always good to have her back in a Mission Impossible movie. But you meet her and Wes Bentley, her new husband, and then they figure out that they've got the 2 bombs and they can't they have to defuse them at the same time, and then there's the detonator. So everybody splits up, and then Tom Cruise flies a frickin' helicopter, which is amazing. But he has to get on the helicopter first, so he like hangs off of the bottom of that. I thought that was a really cool scene where he's trying to climb up that rope, and then he just falls and is barely able to hang on to that payload, and then get himself back up to the helicopter. I mean, there you can definitely feel a difference between kind of like the helicopter scenes that he's doing And like the helicopter scenes at the beginning is it Spectre? Yeah, at the beginning of Spectre, the Mexican Day of the Dead thing at the beginning of that movie. They just
Oh
feel
yeah.
they just feel different because you can tell that it's CGI, that there's, they're on some sort of a gimbal or something in a fake helicopter when James Bond's fighting that guy at the beginning. Whereas with this, there were certain scenes you could definitely tell were real, and you could feel that. And Tom Cruise learned how to fly a helicopter for this thing, and I mean, just did it up. He was doing stunts that some of the stunt guys were, would have been reticent to do. So that's so cool, and it's amazing that he's, willing to do that just to make people happy, or get them to go to the movie theater. So, but it paid off for me. I thought those scenes were really cool. And then you got Henry Cavill, trying to kill him the whole time. But it was hard to. There was definitely CGI involved in those scenes, but the particularly impressive scenes were the ones with just Tom Cruise in the helicopter flying around. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, once again, whether or not you can fake that or not, whether or not you can make that look real through CGI, it doesn't matter, because knowing it's him adds something to it. It just does. And the fact that there's just a camera mounted on the side of the helicopter and you see Cruise going around doing his thing, it's amazing. It adds something to it. I've got nothing more to add to that sequence other than it is really well done. It's extremely well done. Just when you think you've had enough, meaning it's going to come to a conclusion, someone's going to die, it takes it one step further. Then it takes it one step further. And then it goes and things drop between mountains, and then they fall out, and then it's on a hook, and you're thinking, okay, that hook is going to kill somebody. Obviously it's not Tom Cruise, but you're not sure, and what's going to happen. You know that somebody's falling to their death, and it's Henry Cavill, because it couldn't be Ethan Hunt. But how are they going to go about doing that is what's exciting, and it works. And once again, just in the nick of time, he falls over. We've seen this a million times in the movies where he falls over. And what I thought was great was that the whole last part of that sequence the whole sequence is about getting the timer, or the
detonator.
What do you want to call it? The detonator. Yes, thank you. And then once the detonator is like physically capable of being touched, it falls somewhere else and goes somewhere else. And the fact that you never see him get the detonator and it's just in his hand at the end is such a better payoff. It just is, because the fact that he's hanging off the side of the mountain is crazy. And it didn't matter how he got it, he's got it. And that to me is smart filmmaking, especially in this kind of genre, because it's been shown a million times before, him reaching for it and grabbing for it. Him, Henry Cavill's character reaching for it and then cutting his wrist and then cutting and biting. We've seen it a million times. The fact that he's just hanging off with it in his hand is great. And then they top it off with him spitting the actual plug or button out.
The fuse.
Because that's how the fuse, that's how he stopped it. That's great. It's just one of those moments that everybody in the theater, if the theater was filled, we probably would have started clapping, because it was that kind of electric moment. And I think maybe people did do a little bit of cheering when I saw it, but it just works. And at this point in the game with these films and this genre of films, you're thinking, I've seen it all. How do they pull it off? And they do. Hook, line, and sinker. It's exciting as hell.
It's really well done too, because the way that they do that is once they cut the wires, once Luther and Benji and Ilsa cut those wires, the screen goes white, and then when it comes back from white, when it fades back from white, you see you see a shot. You're behind Ethan. He's hanging off. He's got one hand hanging up, and then one hand holding the detonator. And for me, what I was thinking was that, like, he doesn't have like, also it looks like there might be like a flash, like he's looking towards where they are for a flash and he's looking into the sun, which is going down. And the whole time when I see that, I'm thinking he can't take the detonator out. He can't take the fuse out because he's got one hand holding himself up and one hand holding the detonator. He doesn't have a third hand to take the fuse out. And so we're just waiting for the flash or whatever. And then we get the reverse shot of him with the fuse in his mouth. And I'm like, okay, that's clever. That's really clever. And then he spits it out. So I thought that was good. But we should also talk about the Ilsa and Benji fight scene with Lane. Did you know that Rebecca Ferguson was like 6 months pregnant when she was shooting that scene?
Really?
Yeah.
No, I had no idea.
I didn't know that until I did some reading about this. And so I think that might have been one of the last things that they shot. But yeah, she was fairly pregnant and she was doing some stunts. I was, that's pretty amazing, that they were able to do that. But yeah, I thought that was a nice setup. You get, Benji kind of comes in to save Ilsa because she's all, strapped to that chair. But what ends up happening is Ilsa saves Benji from strangulation, from being hanged. So that was pretty cool. And then Luther gets to talk with Julia while they're kind of like, she does the whole like, so how is he? That whole thing.
Yeah, I loved it. I love that.
And both of them, you can kind of tell like that they're, they are, those two characters know the most about Ethan Hunt in this world. And so they have an understanding about Ethan that nobody else does, because Luther's been with Ethan from the beginning, and, and Julia has been a big part of Ethan's life. And so that's when, after all is said and done and he's recovering and all that stuff, there is that kind of like little thing that's said between Julia and Ilsa that I guess is supposed to be the kind of like the, everybody's on the same page now. Julia's going to go off on her own or, with her husband. And now Ethan should feel okay pursuing Ilsa, I guess. So, because that was, I guess, where the last movie ended. It was kind of like this weird, like, he's not done with Julia. And it's a good way to start the movie, too. Him not being done with Julia.
Yeah, well, when she says, yes, I'm happy, I'm really happy, that's when you know they're done. That's when you know, yeah, he still cares for her and she still cares a lot for him and vice versa, but they're done. Yep. They've had their time, and now he's put her in jeopardy one more time, not of his own doing, but it is because of him that she is where she's at the end of the film, and now her new husband at the same time, which I thought that was really good that Wes Bentley had kind of, wink, wink, nod, nod at the end of the film. Yeah, all this big army came in to see you later, doctor. And he now knows that something's up, which is great, because why not have a character that's happy in a movie, first of all? And that Wes Bentley seems to be a happy guy, and he's happy with what he does. And because of, they gave him some background because of Julia, he now has something to look forward to other than going to work 9 to 5 or whatever he was doing before then. So it kind of gives it some texture to it that is not a necessity, but it does add to it. And you're right, it does end that relationship or scenario. I mean, you can always bring her back if you need to. And it does kind of put you in a place where he can pursue this new person, or this new old person, if you will. But I think where they're going with that is that, maybe Ethan Hunt shouldn't really explore a relationship if he's going to do what he does for a living, because it never works out right. I mean, either she's going to end up trying to kill you later on, which is what happens in this film, or she's going to get taken hostage, or she's going to get killed or something. Now with this new situation, Ilsa's situation, she can take care of herself, so we're not as much worried about her as we would have been anybody else. But I think they need to end that whole idea of him being in a relationship in the movies. Not that he doesn't have side relationships or has a relationship, but it cannot be part of the actual films because it's been done now and it's done really well. And they kind of tie it up in this one.
Well, yeah, and I think it'll always be a will they, won't they type thing, because once they kind of either, consummate that or, part ways for whatever reason, it's over. That character is over. Ilsa's gone because you're not going to get rid of Ethan Hunt, and we know that because he's going to keep making these movies. So yeah, Ilsa would be the one to go if they ever resolve that kind of like sexual tension between them. So it's probably better to keep that as is, at least for another one or two more movies, unless they kind of like do a pass the torch to Ilsa, and make Ilsa the main character for future Mission Impossible movies. So I guess they might have wanted to have Jeremy Renner back, but only to kill him, only to kill his character. So I'm still scratching my head as to why that was even a character in the Ghost Protocol. So
it's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother podcast.
Yep. But either way, he couldn't do it because he was supposed to shoot Avengers Infinity War. And guess what? He's not in it.
Yeah.
So,
He's locked. Oh, he's not.
I don't think he is. He's not in it.
Oh, yeah. You're right. He's coming up, though.
Yeah, but he had they had an option that they exercised or whatever and said, like, you need to be available to shoot during these months. And they just never called him. So, but now maybe maybe he did shoot scenes for the second one at the same time. Because I think they shot them concurrently. But still, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, that's interesting. I guess he could always come back in the future because nobody even said anything about him.
Yeah, why not? Right? Yeah.
I guess. I don't know, but he's definitely not going to be there to replace Tom Cruise because that ain't happening. So, and I'm sure he can't run as well as Tom Cruise can. So, but yeah, I did have a good time with this movie. But it is one of those things where it's like, I think you go into it. I was expecting like some masterpiece, and I didn't get that. So. But I do appreciate it for what it is. So you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can tweet us at actorengineer. We'll see you next week.